So after 432 dates on Match.com, I finally found the one, Tommy. Yes, that's her real name if you were wondering. And we got married, and because I was the ripe age of 47, we decided to start a family right away. So with lots of practice, she got pregnant. And at the 2-month mark, we went to the doctor, and the nurse puts the goo on Tommy's belly and takes the instrument. And above the nurse's head is the monitor, and you can see the fetus and the little heart beating. And I thought, wow, that's the miracle of life. And we rushed home, and we started picking out names for the baby, started picking out colors for the baby room, started telling all our friends and family about the wonderful event. And then at the 3-month mark, we went back to the doctor, and the nurse puts the goo on Tommy's belly and takes the instrument. And then all of a sudden, her face drops, and she says, "I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat." And that just felt like someone had hit me as hard as they could in the stomach. My legs went numb. I look at Tommy, she's devastated, she's crying. It made me feel even more devastated. My mind starts racing. Why? Why did this happen? And how can we handle the pain if she gets pregnant again? At that moment, I felt so heartbroken. But 3 months later, she gets pregnant again with lots of practice. And now we have this amazing boy, Miles Thomas, and he's the smartest, best looking, most coordinated kid on our block. No, really, on our block. Ask my wife. It's true. I know each one of you in here has had a painful moment. Maybe you had a terrible breakup. Maybe you got divorced. Maybe your parents got divorced. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you lost a dear friend before it was time. It's unavoidable. It's the human experience, right? Luckily, thankfully for us, our painful moment with the miscarriage was temporary. But for many people, their tragedy is lifelong. But it is their tragedy that defines them. And a great example of this is my dear friend, David Metter. David is the national blind golf champion. And he's one of the happiest guys I know. So I have him speak to my happiness class. Yes, I teach a class on happiness, so I'm very lucky. And he tells my class what I know everyone in here is thinking. How does a blind man play golf? Well, he has a coach, and the coach aligns the club, and then aligns the face, and David takes it back and hits it down the middle, and he is really good. Don't bet him. I've lost money. No, he's really good. But he also tells my class of the horrific accident, how he's coming over the hill way too fast. He can't stop. His car hits the tree. His head bashes into the windshield. He gets into a coma. And when he awakens in the hospital, the doctor's standing over him and says, "David, you severed your ocular nerve. You will never see for the rest of your life." He'll be blind from the age of 18 for the rest of his life. And he tells my class that before the accident, he was selfish, he was uncomposed. He had no idea where he wanted to go or who he wanted to be, but the accident changed him to his core, because after the accident, he became much more focused, much more compassionate, much more caring. In fact, he tells my class blindness allowed him to truly see what was important in his life, like friends and family. He also tells my class he's the only man in America who could walk through Home Depot and never see anything he wants. But that's his joke, not mine. David Metter allowed me to see that the old science of loss is incomplete. I know a lot of you are familiar with Kubler-Ross. She investigated people who were dying, and she said they went through these stages: anger, denial, depression, bargaining, acceptance. Well, David just didn't accept his lot. He just didn't bounce back. He wasn't just resilient. He bounced back even higher. He transcended because of his tragedy. He used adversity as a superpower for personal growth. David Metter exemplifies, to me, one of my favorite quotes from Michelangelo, the famed Renaissance sculptor. And Michelangelo said these words: "I saw the angel in the stone, and I carved until I set it free." I love that quote. There's so many people that are hit by a painful tragedy, and they act as if they're frozen in stone. They build a fortress around their heart, They're immobilized by that pain. But there's other people, like David Metter, who use their painful adversity, their tragedy, as a chisel to free their authentic self, to become the person they're meant to be. And I know there's a lot of people that are suffering, they're in pain. Like me, I had the miscarriage, I lost my dad at a young age, and they're still stuck in that moment. And I want to understand how people could get unstuck, how people could use adversity to their advantage. So I made it my journey, my mission to figure this out. And so I interviewed people from all over the world who said they had turned tragedy into transcendence. I interviewed a woman who lost a husband and a daughter in a Mumbai terrorist attack, and you can imagine how painful that was. And she said it was terribly painful, but she said she became a better person because of it. I interviewed a man who lost his home, became homeless, but he started a new job, a thriving business. I interviewed a person who was an addict who overcame his addiction and then went into the ministry, and then now he's helping other addicts. And I was looking for 2 or 3 or 4 factors that led to their transcendence. But to my amazement, after each interview, I discovered that they all went through the same stages in the same order to transcendence. But it makes sense, right? Because Kubler-Ross discovered stages, Piaget discovered cognitive stages of development, and we all know there's physiological stages, so why not stages of transcendence? And the first stage is this. It is the wake-up call. People have said it's like the tragedy slapped them in the face and they awoke into their life, and now they realize they're not in a place they should be, they're not on the path they need to be, and they're not as happy as they want to be. And so they must change. A lot of them said it was like they were sleepwalking and the tragedy slapped them right in the face and awoken them to their life. And then that led to the second stage. They flipped the switch. They realized this terrible, terrible moment had purpose, and they must move in a new direction. They must realign their life. And because they're realigning their life, they get way out of their comfort zone, and now they realize strengths and talents they never knew existed, which led to the third stage. They release their genius. And once they release their genius, they can move to the fourth stage. They create a new life song for themselves. And a life song is this. It's when their life is aligned with their true purpose. And once that happens, they have joy, they have happiness, they have contentment beyond compare. They live in their flow every day. But it ultimately led to the fifth stage, the final stage, which is what I call finding their we spot. And the we spot is this. They let go of the ego, what they can get, but what they can give. What they can give. They move from a me mentality to a we mentality, and now they give off this amazing energy, and the world responds to them in kind. And they live a life they've only imagined. This is what I call Transcend-Ability. This is the new science of resilience. Tragedy doesn't have to beat you up and kick your butt. Tragedy can lift you higher. Tragedy can propel you to a higher existence. You can fall up. And I know, now that you've heard these stages, you probably think, yeah, I've heard those before. You probably remember the father that lost his son, maybe by cancer or some other terrible tragedy, and he started a charity. But I don't know if you realize there's these stages that he went through. And you'll probably see him now. You'll see him everywhere now that you know of him. You'll see him in movies, you'll see him in books, you'll see him in magazines, you'll see him in tweets. Okay, not tweets, but you're going to see him everywhere. You'll actually even see him in stories you've heard, like Petra. Petra is a supermodel, and she was vacationing with her photographer boyfriend in Thailand, and a tsunami came in 2004. Do you remember that story? And the wave took her boyfriend out to sea, and he lost his life. And that wave took Petra, and it pummeled her, and it broke her bones. But it also lifted her so high, she could grab onto the palm fronds of a palm tree. Can you imagine how high that wave was? And she's hanging on there for dear life for 8 hours in terrible pain. But that pain did not compare to the psychic pain. Because as she's hanging on there, she hears these children crying for help. Please help, please help, please help. She couldn't let go. Can you imagine that? She knew if she let go, she'd be a goner. Well, when the water receded and they rescued her, she's in the hospital, and she realizes that terrible, terrible moment had purpose in her life. She said this was her wake-up call. And she flipped the switch and she said, I'm going to start a charity for children and I'm going to build schools. Well, Petra never started a charity before. She got way out of her comfort zone, but because of that, she realized strengths and talents she never knew existed. She became a great fundraiser, a great organizer. She went back to business school to gain her business savviness, and she started a charity called Happy Hearts Fund. And to date, it's opened more than 100 schools throughout the world. This is Petra Nenkova's new life song. And Petra knew she was in her wee spot when at one of the school openings, one of the headmasters comes up to her and puts his hand in hers and he says, Petra Nenkova, you are our guardian angel. And she said that was some of the sweetest words she's ever heard. Think about it. She was someone who was all about superficialities, projecting her image, and that tragedy changed her to her core, and she became a person of purpose, someone who had powerful impact on the world. This is Transcend-Ability. This is the new science of resilience. And when I read these stories and I did this research, it changed me to my core because I started interacting with people different. I started thinking about the world different. It actually gave me a jolt of self-awareness because I had gone through these stages of transcendence and I didn't even know it. About 8 years ago, 3:30 in the morning, I was waking up like clockwork. It felt like a panic attack, like I was getting the heart palpitations and the head tingling and shortness of breath, and I would just tell myself, go back to sleep, take some deep breaths. And I know some of you feel that same feeling, and I had no idea why. Why was I feeling that? I was a professor, I was living a good life, I was playing golf almost every day, and then I get the wake-up call, Dr. Phil. Well, Dr. Phil was on Oprah. Remember when he was on Oprah on Tuesdays? Yes, don't judge me, I watch Oprah. And this woman was describing the same exact feelings that I had. And Dr. Phil said to her, you're in a bad relationship and your physiology is calling you out and you must change. Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in a bad relationship with my career and my physiology was calling to me. Yes, being a professor is a good job. But most professors will tell you that most of the students, they want to know is, Dr. Steinberg, is this going to be on the test? And do I have to really, really buy your book? There's this superficiality to a lot of the connections, and I needed a deep connection. And so I started writing books, I started speaking around the world about meaning and purpose, and that feeling, it went away. It vanished. And I knew I was in my wee spot when I get this email. It's from a Brazilian priest. It's in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, so I de-Googleized it. I wrote a book called Flying Lessons. It's a parenting book. It doesn't teach parents how to fly. It teaches parents how to build mental and emotional toughness in their kids so they soar into life. And it was translated in Spanish. And when I read this email, it was some of the sweetest words I've ever read. It said, God bless you, Dr. Steinberg, for writing Flying Lessons. We love your book. Can we use it in all our church schools? And I thought, heck no. No, I thought, yes, sí, the only words I know in Spanish. And posted that letter in my office to find all those great feelings again. What that experience and these experiences taught me is this. Your soul cries out for meaning and purpose. You must live in purpose. And if you do not, your physiology will find you out. And yes, you can watch endless videos on YouTube about cats with funny hats. You know who I'm talking about. And you can distract yourself by playing golf or other hobbies, and you can deny and placate those negative emotions with substances. But eventually, your physiology will find you out if you do not live in purpose. That's a human truth. But you know, I didn't discover that truth. I didn't even discover the stages of transcendence. Let me read to you what Patanjali wrote, ancient philosopher, 3,000 years ago. And he wrote these words. When you're inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations, and your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new and great, wonderful world. Dormant forces and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a far better person than you ever dreamt to be. He wrote that 3,000 years ago. It's my hope today that you realize that you are the extraordinary project. You are the extraordinary project. And that tragedy awakens you to this process. It's as if tragedy shakes you and says, wake up, get out of your rut, find your true self. And that's why tragedy is such a gift. It's a gift to us because it forces us to find our purpose. But I hope you realize the true essence of the talk is this. You don't need tragedy. You don't need tragedy. But you do need to give yourself the gift of living in purpose. Because once you do, you will hear those sweet notes to your life song, you will free your authentic self, and you will become the person you always wanted to be. That's not an ancient truth. That's not a modern truth. This is our truth. Thank you.